Hello everyone, this is Carbonomics. We haven't exactly seen the carbon credit companies or carbon credits themselves involved with the voluntary carbon markets perform too well over the past year, we'll say. Whether that be carbon project developers like Climate X Developments, down around 60% from its peak in September 2022, or the carbon credit royalty companies like Carbon Streaming, which is currently down around 85% from its peak in December 2021. This makes it safe to say that the public investment options in the carbon credit space are not exactly in favor right now. Be it Base Carbon, another carbon credit royalty company that I'm a shareholder of, same thing here. Down around 50% from its 52-week high. And in this video, we're going to go over why this poor performance in share price has caused an acquisition to fall apart for Base Carbon, and what it means for the company moving forward. So, as I mentioned, Base Carbon is a carbon credit royalty company, which operates just like a royalty company for any other commodity. The precious metal space being the most common with companies like Franco-Nevada. Meaning Base Carbon provides a capital investment to fund a carbon project upfront in exchange for a royalty on a carbon project's revenues, which has been going quite well so far, and the company is actually on track to cash flow positively and potentially even turn a profit in the second half of this year. With a market cap of around 40 to 50 million USD, 10 to 15 million in positive free cash flow is a pretty big deal. And a large part of this success can be attributed to something that's actually incredibly rare in the $2 billion voluntary carbon markets: experienced management. For the most part, Base Carbon's management team didn't have direct experience working on carbon projects, so that's where Hardwick Business Climate Limited, HCBL, comes in, a carbon consulting company. Base Carbon's COO, Phil Hardwick, is the CEO of HCBL. His company's expertise was brought in to help with the carbon credit royalty origination and structuring. And before we discuss the press release from yesterday about the news with HCBL, here's the current corporate structure between HCBL and Base Carbon. There were 3 phases of this acquisition, with the third phase being the final one, which would have marked Base Carbon acquiring all of HCBL's equity. But after the completion of Phase 2 on March 1st, 2022, Base Carbon owns 49.9% of the equity in HCBL. Additionally, Base Carbon Capital Partners Corp., or BCCPC, was formed between the two companies as a shared investment vehicle that would operate the royalties. Base Carbon owns 78% of the equity in that investment vehicle, and HCBL owns about 22%. But through the indirect ownership interest of 49.9% of HCBL, Base Carbon actually owns 89% of BCCPC. So Base Carbon is essentially entitled to 89% of the revenue generated from any royalties currently. Now, Base Carbon was set to completely acquire HCBL on March 1st of 2023, so it would have been a 100% ownership interest, but as you can see in this press release, that acquisition is not going through. Now, both Base Carbon and HCBL have mutually agreed to not complete this deal. With that said, they are working on a new agreement and will continue to collaborate on current projects and additional projects in the pipeline as well. So the most important thing here in my eyes is that Base Carbon seems like they're going to retain that carbon experience, which is absolutely crucial for this company, especially at this stage. And it's worth noting that this is still a shared incentive on both sides to see the other side succeed. With Base Carbon owning 49.9% of HCBL, and HCBL entitled to 11% of the revenues Base Carbon generates on its royalties. So there's an adequate incentive there to continue on good terms. Now, how is all this related to Base Carbon being down 50%, as I pointed out at the beginning of the video? Well, this deal was estimated to be done at a share price of $2, somewhat of a baseline, which would have been a double from the company's listing price, or hopefully higher to avoid significant dilution. Now, there was a value multiplier where Base would have had to pay more for HCBL over a $2 share price, but now we're currently sitting around 47 cents Canadian. So, the hope that the market had was that Base Carbon would have been able to just push out the acquisition to give the share price more time to appreciate, because there would have been sizable dilution to complete the deal right now, but we did want to see that carbon experience completely integrated into base carbon. So as you can see here, the book value to take out the rest of HCBL was approximately 14.7 million as of the listing, and at a market cap of around 40 to 50 million. That's a possibility of around 30% dilution if base needed to raise all that capital, or whatever shares would have been issued to Phil Hardwick. So in conclusion, for the pros, we avoided any significant dilution for now, and it seems like there are adequate incentives to see both parties continue to support one another because of the shared equity ownership by both companies. And most importantly, base carbon is retaining that carbon experience. But for the cons, this creates a new risk that HCBL might end up severing their partnership with base at some point. So base would end up losing that expertise there. But also, base is probably going to lose out on 11% of its revenues permanently now, as those will go to HCBL. So overall, I'd say this was a slightly positive move made by base carbon, given the circumstances. The hope was the share price would be higher to see the acquisition through, but this was definitely the right move situation. And in my opinion, the investment thesis is not materially affected as long as HCBL continues to work with base carbon on more projects, which it seems like they will. So I am perfectly fine with holding here, especially as we expect cash flow positivity in the second half of this year, but hopefully no delays on that, but it is dependent on the carbon credit verifiers. But yeah, that's going to be the end of the video here. If you want to see more videos on carbon credits and base carbon, I will link some playlists for those interested in the description below. But thanks for watching.